Welcome, folks. Today is Wednesday, September the 17th, and guess what? We've got a named storm out in the Atlantic Basin, the 1st of September, the first since Fernan at the end of August. That's what we're going to focus on tonight on HHL. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis, and yeah, Gabrielle, our 7th named storm, is out there in the Atlantic Basin. It's been 18 days since the last advisory was issued on Fernan, and Gabrielle, developed today out of a tropical depression briefly initiated by the National Hurricane Center that was up for about 5 or 6 hours, and then they upgraded it to a tropical storm. We've also got 2 other waves cooking out there in the Atlantic Basin, and we'll tell you both right now are categorized as a low probability of developing. Both are sitting at 20% over the next 7 days. Of course, we're down off the peak of the season, which came our way last week on the 10th. We're coming down from that high, but still September overall is active, as well as at least the first half of October as well. But the season, obviously, has not been very active. Now, we had that gap of 18 days. It may seem like a long time, but compared to the longest gaps on record between named storms, we were nowhere close. We weren't even a third of the way to the longest gap, which was back in 1999. We went from the middle of June pretty much to the middle of August without a named storm, 61 days. And more recently in 2022, we went 60 days from just before the 4th of July all the way through August without any named storm. So 18 days isn't very much. Now that we got the formation of the 7th named storm, let's look at climatology to see where we lined up. Now, when we go back in the last 30 seasons, the average date is around September the 3rd, the 7th named storm. Now, if we go back and look at the last 6 seasons, so more in the shorter term here, you see all the dates on which the 7th named storm formed, the G named storm. Wide range here. 2020, obviously, we were well ahead of the curve here. July 21st, we already had the 7th name, but it can go all the way to September the 20th back in 2022. So the average date of all of these is August the 25th. So when you look back to the last 6 seasons, yeah, we are well behind that by over about 3 weeks or so, with September 17th being the date today of the formation of our 7th named storm. Where is it? Right there. Doesn't look like much because right now it is heavily sheared. We've got strong wind shear here coming in out of the southwest, and that is kind of blowing off all the convection, all the thunderstorm activity, displacing or dislocating it to the northeast of the center, which you can see there with Gabrielle is located southwest of that blow-up of convection. And it's a little more obvious here on visible satellite imagery. You could even see kind of the bare low-level spin completely exposed from this wind shear. Now, despite that, it is still technically a tropical storm. It's a 50-mile-per-hour wind, so it's not like it's just barely a tropical storm sitting at, say, 40-mile-per-hour winds. It's up to 50. And it is expected to kind of shake off this wind shear and organize and intensify and forecast to become our next hurricane, second of the season, as a Category 1. So I'll show you that track here from the Hurricane Center as of the 5 o'clock advisory here. Again, 50-mile-per-hour winds with gusts higher than that, currently moving to the northwest at 14. Now, we go out the next 5 days, and you see by the end of the weekend, it starts to get its act together and intensify a bit up to a Category 1 hurricane, peaking Monday afternoon, at least in the 5 days, up to 85-mile-per-hour winds. And in this cone here is Bermuda. So it's not going to be a storm that's completely not bringing impacts to any land. It will likely bring some sort of either fringe impacts or even direct impacts to Bermuda, depending on its exact track. I will share with you the computer models on this do tend to favor a southern track, at least the hurricane model plots here. Notice there's the cone for reference. A lot of these models are running outside of that forecast cone. Still does keep it safely offshore of the U.S. East Coast, but again, would likely be a threat to Bermuda as a low-end hurricane. It may overperform. It could certainly do that. There's a lot of time between now and then. Certainly, if it finds a pocket of lower wind shear sooner, we could see it get its act together a little bit ahead of schedule here. Now, when we look at the ensemble plots, more of the same. A lot of these coming outside of the forecast cone, favoring more of a southern trend here, even though it's currently moving to the north and west. And there are a considerable amount of these ensemble plots here that are farther off to the west and farther to the south. Still, again, all keep it safely offshore of the U.S. East Coast, but, you know, we'll have to watch it as things evolve here over the next several days or so. Now, long-range models here, the operational plots here of the GFS and the European. GFS is going to be in the yellow. European model is going to be in the red. So right now it is picking up on some sort of development there with the tropical storm in place at the moment. And then it's an interesting thing, especially on the GFS, the most recent run, does show it kind of falling apart, falling victim to the shear. And that's been an ongoing problem so far this season, the shear, and then, of course, just the overall stability out in the Atlantic basin. So GFS is kind of saying, I don't know if this is really going to develop a whole lot more from where it's at right now. European, however, which has a little bit of a better track record, showing it maintaining a tropical storm status and strengthening a bit as it heads towards Bermuda by later this weekend, pretty much in line with the National Hurricane Center forecast. And then both models, the GFS does redevelop it after weakening it considerably, but both do that recurve out to sea. The only thing in the line of fire here would be Bermuda, potentially seeing, again, fringe or direct impacts here from potentially a hurricane getting into the middle of next week. Now, elsewhere in the basin, we've got two tropical waves. A little bit of an interesting graphic here, a little confusing because we've got two waves, one that's currently just to the south west of the Cabo Verde Islands, marked by that X there. Another wave is just about to come off the coast of Africa. Both of them moving into the same area of the main development region. Both hold a low chance, low probability of developing into the next named storm over the next 7 days. 20% on the one already out over the open waters, down to a 10% chance for the one about to exit the coastline and hit the waters there. The long-range outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, again, this comes out every Tuesday, so this is yesterday's update through the end of September, only highlights a small area that kind of favors that general track of what Gabrielle will be taking here over the next 5 days, a recurve out to sea, possibly threatening Bermuda. And then through the first full week of October, still highlighting the main development region here from the Cabo Verde Islands, points west, and does also highlight the Western Caribbean and Southern Gulf. Again, for Central American gyre activity here that could spit something out in the Gulf, could be in the Western Caribbean, or spit it out into the Eastern Pacific, which has been very active, so probably more likely we see more activity there rather than the Caribbean or Gulf, which has remained very quiet so far this season. We only had Barry in the Gulf earlier, and that was a weak tropical storm at the beginning of the season. All right, out there right now in the Eastern Pacific, things are quieting down a bit. We don't have a named storm at the moment right now. This is what's left of what was Mario. Next up will be Narda, and this has got a high chance of developing here. But again, you see the general motion. It should keep it well offshore, not impacting anybody. But next name on the list, 13th named storm coming up as Narda in the Eastern Pacific. All right, that's the latest out in the tropics, both the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic Basin. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to have our tropical trivia. Stick around. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. Yesterday's tropical trivia question was, what was the first male name used for a tropical storm? Back in 1979, that was Hurricane or Tropical Storm and eventually Hurricane Bob, that actually made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in Louisiana back in 1979. Yeah, that landfall there did cause some damage right near New Orleans there. They were on the dirty side of the storm system there back in 1979. All right, keeping with first of names, what was the name of the first storm to be retired in the Atlantic Basin? Was it Carol, Connie, Diane, or Hazel? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow night on Hurricane Hub Live. Remember, we are here 7 days a week at 8 p.m. on the dot for the latest on the tropics. We'll see you back here on Thursday.